Hello, welcome to another What's Happening in Brazil. My name is José Bernardes and starting now, I will show you what's going on in the country. Let's begin with the week's latest news. With the high levels of contagion and deaths by COVID-19 in Brazil, state governments are discussing more rigid rules for the quarantine. In the country's Northeastern region, social distance measures have become more restrictive. On May 11, the governor of the state of Pernambuco announced the implementation of strict isolation measures. With the changes, the use of face masks became mandatory, and there are rules to stop people from driving and go out onto the streets on certain days. The only ones exempt from these measures are essential workers like health and public safety professionals. In the city of Fortaleza, in the state of Ceará, social distance rules have been stricter since the 8th of May. Through a decree, the governor also determined that the movement of vehicles and people be restricted unless justified. Checkpoints were also set up at entry points into the city. In the state of Maranhão, stricter restrictions have been in place for even longer, since May 5th. This is the only state in the country's northeast to adopt the term lockdown, the complete closure of and restrictions on everything besides essential business and personal. In the midst of a pandemic that is devastating the entire world, the importance of healthcare professionals couldn't be more evident. They are the ones to first come into contact with coronavirus patients, the ones to care for them daily, assisting them with their mental and physical health. This past week, when International Nurses Day was commemorated, What's Happening in Brazil pays respect to and applauds the actions of these professionals who are tasked with saving thousands of lives. At the same time, we are reminded of the changes we need to implement in order to value these heroes even more. Unfortunately, in Brazil, their working conditions are far from ideal. With long shifts and suffering from stress due to the overcrowding of health centers, one of the main demands within the sector is the 30-hour week. Besides this, it's important to remember that these professionals are among the most affected by the coronavirus. Up till now, more than 12,000 nurses have been infected and 98 have died in the country. In today's Culture Talk, we will talk about education. Every year, Brazil undertakes one of the biggest university admissions exams in the entire world, called ENEM. The test, which originally functioned solely as a high school evaluation, repurposed during the Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva government. To ensure access to university education became more democratic. This month, Jair Bolsonaro's government decided to keep the exam on the schedule for this year. However, this decision doesn't take into account the social distance scenario due to the coronavirus pandemic, nor the difficulties students are facing in regards to their learning routines.
The decision to have the exam, which for many is a doorway to university, to go on as planned, has teachers and students rushing to make up for the lost time incurred due to the closing of schools. For students in the public system, long-distance learning cannot make up for in-person classes.
Sometimes you want to do your work and the teacher is in a meeting and has no time to reply. With in-person classes, he would explain things right then and there, and you would understand things. I'm not learning anything, so it will be hard for me, very hard.
Muita.
Beyond the difficulties the students are facing in regards to learning, teachers tell us that long-distance learning is reaching very few students. The majority don't have the infrastructure to keep up with classes.
There's a whole path high school seniors have to follow in order to take the university entry exams. We have been doing all this virtually, a dynamic that is not ideal for this type of situation. We still have to take into account that virtual learning is only reaching 30 to 40% of students.
A video released by the government is also generating anger among students. The video says that it is only up to the student to do well in the exam.
Unfortunately, the government isn't worried about poor people going to college. This is why we are asking for the exam to be postponed, so we may debate with the government and with society a new plan, with a calendar that takes into account the limitations of the current situation.
Limites pedagógicos.
Brazil's semi-arid region spans around 12% of the country's territory and encompasses more than 1,200 municipalities. Around 27 million people live in the region, which is also known for its enormous social inequality. Now, social movements fear the impact the COVID-19 pandemic may have on residents and are demanding responses from government entities.
The biggest portions of the semi-arid regions of Brazil are located in the country's northeast, but are also present in other states. The Semi-Arid Articulation of Brazil, or ASA, which unites more than 3,000 entities, published a letter with proposals for the government so it may effectively start to combat COVID-19 in the semi-arid regions.
Primeiro é a necessidade de informação e de comunicação eficiente. One of the main issues is informing and communicating effectively so that people know how to avoid contagion and how to proceed in the case of infection. Recursos do programa de cisternas.
The semi-arid region has a lot of land, water, and media outlets, which generates huge social inequalities. Therefore, its population faces many challenges because of the coronavirus pandemic.
It's important to note that more than 1 million families in the semi-arid regions have a well and thus access to water fit for human consumption. But it's also important to mention that for at least the last 3 years, we are suffering from cutbacks in public policies, with cuts in wealth transfer programs, social assistance, programs supporting family agriculture, and also programs that made healthcare more available to the population. The impacts of the pandemic are economic, social, political, and cultural. When we look at the families from communities that were only beginning to be reached by public works, we notice that the situation only tends to get worse.
Tende a se agravar.
Now it's time for Brazilianism.
My name is Maria Brasil and I'm here in my kitchen with produce I have received from the Landless Workers Movement, Harvest Through Sustainable Agriculture. We are going to make a yam soup. The yam was peeled raw and I already put it in water to boil. Then we put some seasoning, a little cumin and a little salt and pepper. Let the yam cook in this way. The right broth texture, a little thicker or more watery, depends on how many people are eating and how you like it. It will become a little like pasta. You can then turn it off. This is the soup. Now every soup deserves some final touches. We make do with what we have. You can fry some garlic cloves. If you want, you can put some thyme of meat inside also. After that, put some onions, organic chive, and let them roast a bit. We are also gonna put some cilantro. After they are all cooked, just add them to the soup as a seasoning. And that's it. The soup is ready. Very quick, right?
That's all for today, folks. We will see you next week. Bye bye.